Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on TikTok. This is the show where we are British, we love the United Kingdom, and we want to stay together. And if that's you, please keep watching. And if that's not you, please keep watching anyway, because you might learn something. Now, folks, we are teleprompter free. We're going at it. We're asking for your comments, your questions, your thoughts on what has been happening in our wonderful United Kingdom this week. Please send them in and let's populate the threads with your comments. And we'll do our very best to respond to you. Now, please, folks, if you're watching on Facebook, please give us a like and please share, because that's the way that we get the message out. If you're watching on YouTube, please smash that thumbs up button. That really helps the algorithm, and it really helps to tell YouTube that we're broadcasting, and it helps to feed this out to the rest of the world. If you're watching on Twitter, please give us a repost, and indeed give us a quote repost about how much you enjoy the show, and we will repost your quote repost to 28,000 people. That's worth it. That's a 360 win, as they say. And also on YouTube, we're monetized now, so you can send us a super chat and we'll be sure to read that one out. We've got a busy show lined up with a lot of topics to talk about tonight. I'm pleased to say that I gave a speech. I haven't given a speech for quite a wee while. I gave a speech on Saturday just past to a private group of individuals on the matter of quote unquote the Britishness of Scotland, which can also be understood as the Scottishness of Britain. And I'll be talking to you about that speech and how that went down later in the programme. I'm also going to be speaking about the immigration situation, which is beginning to become a very important issue these days. And we'll also be talking about the state of Scottish politics such as it is, as always. But you don't have to live in Scotland to be concerned about that. You just need to simply be living in the United Kingdom. So folks, please do keep watching us. And please do send in your comments and your greetings. And let's check. Debbie was first in, who says, hello everyone. Hello to you, Debbie, and good evening to Derek Hart, who hopes everyone is well. Thank you for your good wishes on that, Derek, who goes on to say, what's our thoughts on Northern Ireland Assembly back together? Is it now planning for a referendum on a full Ireland in the next 10 years? Well, certainly there will be those who are wanting to plan for that. Whether they get their way, of course, is a different matter entirely. And we'll have to see. You know, Derek, you make a good point there. Maybe we should get somebody from Northern Ireland to tell us what their thoughts are. So anybody watching from Northern Ireland tonight, please give us your thoughts on Stormont being back together, and if you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. And indeed, if you know anybody in Northern Ireland who would like to appear on our show as a guest, then please tell that person to contact us, and we would be happy to speak with that person on a show in the future. because that's a big issue that really does require somebody on the spot to tell us how that's going to go down. So if you're from Northern Ireland tonight, tell us what your thoughts are on that, please. Hello to British Legends and to that Preston journalist who was on our show last week, and we cut the interview with Ash and we put the full interview up on our YouTube page, and pleased to say it got almost 1,000 views. And if you check in on that, please do share it. Harry says, good evening, AFFG and Unionists. Hope everyone is well. I do hope the King's treatment goes well. Let's talk about the King in a moment, Harry. A force for good, always for good, no surrender, says British Legends. On TikTok, PH says, long live the Union. Who else on TikTok has some good things? Liam says, do we need to start speaking up the way Liz has done about how far the left have gone? That was a lady, I believe, who was at some conference yesterday who said that she started out as a left-wing person but became a right-wing person. I think that's the person you're referring to, sir. TikTok Realist says something that I don't understand. Paul says, hello, my British brother. Hello to you, sir. User 4525 says, was this guy in Greece? Wouldn't you like to know, as they say? Very possibly I was. Good. Ryan says, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from the West Riding of Yorkshire. And Catherine says, hello as well. And Paul says, good evening from the Garden of England. Now, Harry says there is still a British Unionist majority in Northern Ireland, and it is a shame that there is a nationalist First Minister. It most certainly is a shame, isn't it, Harry? How things change and end up in that way. That's politics. Things can change very rapidly in ways that you don't necessarily want, as we're seeing in the United Kingdom with the levels of mass immigration that are going on. More about that in a minute. Roxana says, hi all to you too, Roxana. Hope things are going well with you. Now, yes, we were obviously saddened to hear about the King and his health condition, and we wish the very best for him. We wish him strength and fortitude in his efforts, and we can be comforted in the fact that we know, of course, he's going to get the best of British treatment. And just around that question, there is something that I wanted to mention, because, you know, quite a few of our supporters, our people, they have a kind of difficult relationship with the current king, and I personally understand where they're coming from, because, of course, King Charles is quite overt about his what looks like strong support for the climate issue, which many people believe to be a very politicised issue, and many people, of course, don't even agree with his particular point of view on that, and he is unfortunately close to some people in the World Economic Foundation, which is a globalist group that, like most globalist groups, is not really up to much good. But to these people, I would say, you know, the king is only a man. You can't expect that you're going to agree with him on everything, and we can't expect that he's going to agree with us on everything. And he is like all of us. You know, he is fallen in the sense that he's not in any way perfect. So we have to make allowances in that regard for him. And I say that deliberately because it's not a good idea to attack the person of the king, because the king is like the embodiment of the nation. And if you're a Christian, for example, you do believe that the king is the embodiment of the national soul as well. So if you're attacking the person of the king, you are attacking the nation in that way, and no good is going to come from that. And if he was to disappear, or if the monarchy was to disappear, who is going to be in his place? It's going to be the prime minister, who's what a here today, gone tomorrow figure, who's in fact much more divisive even than a monarch is. So there's no good in attacking the king just because you disagree with him politically. And of course, this has been a problem in British history when in the past the kings and queens have been attacked or beheaded or so on. But, you know, that was wrong then, and it's wrong today to try to depose the king. That's not the British way. That's not the British identity. You know, the British people support the monarchy. It's a key part of being British. And it's what marks people out as culturally British if they support the monarchy. So we always say, just don't expect too much of the king just because he's the king. He is a man also, and all men are mistaken in some way. So in that sense as well, I talked there about the Christian view of the servant king. And in that sense, the king is sacred because we literally call upon God to save him. And that doesn't just mean saving his bodily, temporal person. It means saving his soul, as it were. And so Christians and others are called upon not to attack the embodiment of the nation, but to indeed pray for the embodiment of the nation. And in fact, in the United Kingdom, we are unique in having a national anthem which is a prayer for God to save the king's soul, not just his temporal person. Anyway, after that, let me just remind you that we talk about this. We talk about this in our magazine, King and Country, which is available from our shop at aforceforgood.uk/shop1. And it's a merchandise that keeps us on air, as they say. We are on air because of the merchandise. Hey to Scotland Scorpion, how are you doing this evening? And to Daniel. James says, I think King Charles will handle his illness with dignity, and Godspeed a speedy recovery. Absolutely, I second that emotion, James. Ryan pitches in here on Northern Ireland. Major studies have been conducted by several institutions dedicated towards the perceived perception of public opinion in Northern Ireland upon the question of unification. All of them, as far as I'm aware, have concluded that there has been no significant change in public opinion in relation to this matter. Absolutely. And, you know, I don't think the island is ready for that, because the Republic is never going to be ready for a British Northern Ireland. The Republic, even today, is very exclusionary of British icon, British symbols, British identity. It's only recently that they've come slowly round to addressing the British element of their history, which of course went kind of upside down in 1916 and never really recovered. But in time, I think more people in the South can come to understand their British Irishness also. Let's hope so anyway, because that's essential for a peaceful land. Got a few Irish Republicans with their comments coming in. Trainspotter wants the national anthem to be about the country. Well, not really. I mean, why singing a jingoistic song about how great your country is not really that meaningful at the end of the day. I know the French do it and all the other countries do it about what a great country they've got, but at the end of the day, that's just words. You've got to be a little bit more deeper, and that's why the British National Anthem is actually a direct consequence of British Christianity. And we always understood that up until the point when Christianity got forced out of the United Kingdom, which is sort of beginning of the 20th century, prior to the World Wars, when Britain was much more conscious of these things than they are today. And Paul says, of course, apparently a fifth of Catholics in Northern Ireland support the Union too. That's absolutely true. And it's in everybody's best interest, whatever religion they are, to support the Union, because the Union is quite inclusive in that manner these days. Somebody here makes a reference to a long since debunked verse that the Scottish Republicans like to claim as part of the national anthem. We addressed that, Sebastian, in our article in our magazine when we spoke about the British national anthem, and the particular verse, quote unquote, which you referred to is not in fact a verse of the British national anthem, and it's never been a verse of the British national anthem, and we wrote the definitive article on that. We wrote a 5,000 word dissertation on that particular verse, and we've summarised it there on our magazine and also in our website, where you can find this article, aforceforgood.uk. And the thing is, as we say here, it's an urban myth promoted by people who are opposed to the monarchy in the first place, and they use it as a convenient excuse for their republicanism. That's our website, aforceforgood.uk. Go to that and you'll find everything you need to know about that ridiculous claim that there's an anti-Scottish verse. Absolutely ridiculous. Good looking at the TikToks. Oh man, some of the comments on TikTok are crazy, but please keep sending them in, folks. We do love them. Harry says something that maybe the TikTok people can tell us about. I remember there was once a newspaper talking about how in some areas in the Republic of Ireland they were loyal to the Crown. It was an interesting thing, and I wonder if it was true. Well, there's certainly a lot of Catholics who are loyal to the Crown, although presumably they would prefer a Catholic monarch. But they're still loyal subjects of the British Crown. No reason why they shouldn't be. I'm glad that they are. So, talking about... what were we talking about there? Let's move on to talk about Keir Starmer and the state of the British Labour Party. And this is simply because yesterday he tweeted out a tweet wherein, get this, he claimed that Labour were going to introduce a law which was going to mean that black, Asian, ethnic minority people and disabled people would be entitled to equal pay. Let's put that up. Unbelievable tweet that was so deceptive and so dangerously deceptive as well. Let me see if I can find that. Here we go, Starmer. There he goes. Labour's Race Equality Act will extend full equal pay rights to black, Asian, ethnic minority and disabled workers for the first time. And we retweeted this and we said, considering that slavery has never been legal in England or Scotland, we'd have to go back a very long time to find a time when it was legal, if ever, to pay black people less because they were black instead of white. Of course, it's never been legal to pay in Britain somebody of a different colour less simply because they were a different colour. That's never been legal. And to the extent that it's been a legal requirement, well, we've had that in our laws officially for a long time. So what is he meaning when he puts that out? And that's very dangerous language, because he is suggesting that today it's somehow legal to discriminate on the basis of the colour of your skin, when it's not legal to discriminate in that way, and it's not been legal in Britain to do that for a very long time. So imagine, say, you're a young person growing up in London or something like that. You're maybe black or Asian or ethnic minority in some way, and you read that and you don't know any better because you haven't been told any better, and you don't know what the laws of the land are, and you see that from a potential Labour leader suggesting that for the first time, black people and Asian people are going to have equal pay rights. You're going to be angry. You're going to be angry because you're going to say, that's ridiculous that it's taken to 2024 before you're going to grant black people or Asian people or whatever the same pay rights. You're going to be angry, and you're going to start to dislike the country that you think has kept that right away from you until 2024. You see what I mean? So that's dangerous language. He's just putting out what is effectively a lie, because that law has been in place for generations, and it's never been legal in Britain to discriminate on the basis of race. It's never been officially legal to do that. So that's dangerous rhetoric. Now, I don't know what he means by that. He's maybe got some kind of scheme where he's referring to something like, some ethnic minorities are underrepresented in certain fields of endeavour, and in that sense, because they're not in that field of endeavour, they're not being paid what they would be if they were in that field of endeavour. And he's going to somehow make some kind of law that will encourage more people of a certain colour to get into that field of endeavour. I don't know what he means, but the way he phrased it was deliberate to make people who don't know any better think that in 2024, black people, Asian people, ethnic minority people and disabled people are discriminated against on the basis of equal pay. And that's a disgraceful thing to do, to give that mistaken impression deliberately. So that's what we're facing, folks. He's going to almost certainly be the next Prime Minister. So what on earth are we going to be facing? Time can only tell, but hey, we're just going to have to deal with it, because these things just have to run their course. Daniel here says, good to hear from Daniel. The monarchy is the country's first line of defence. In monetary terms, they are the only family wealthy enough to fund a defence, and that is the true purpose. Interesting points. in simple basic terms of building and protecting a community. Catherine says that Keir Starmer isn't the full shilling. Hey Alan, hope you're well. Quite a few people commenting. Good to see people commenting on TikTok. Unionists, please pile in as well. Tepes says all these people in the comments who joined the hive mind and they don't think for themselves. He's referring to all our Irish Republican friends who are wading in with their considered opinion on the future of the monarchy. Douglas Brown says millions are starving in the UK right now. Well, I'm not quite sure it's millions who are starving in the UK right now, really. But certainly there's a lot of people struggling because of the cost of living. He asks, since when did the UK become a third world country? Probably from the time that Tony Blair started getting in, and certainly this century the borders have just been opened, and that has caused all sorts of problems as far as housing is concerned, as far as NHS is concerned, and as far as other such things are concerned. Daniel says that he's a chef and has the pleasure of working with folk from all over the world, and never have they complained about the money they get. Now, good. Oh, let's now do On This Day. It's the bottom of the hour. Let's do On This Day in British history. And folks, after we've done that, I'll ask you a question and send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk for this little prize, which is our badge. If you like that badge, send your email answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. Cool. A lot of good engagement tonight on TikTok. Right. Yes, on this day in British history. Well, it was on this day, 7th of February in 1783, when the Scotsman General George Augustus Elliot led his forces successfully to defend a certain island at the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea called Gibraltar. And he ended what was called the Great Siege of Gibraltar in 1783. And ever since then, Gibraltar has been British. And this was a siege that began back in 1779, 4 years earlier. And it was an unsuccessful attempt by Spain and France to capture the island from the British during the so-called American War of Independence, or what we prefer to call the American War of Separation from the United Kingdom, which was a big mistake for which they've been suffering ever since. So it was the largest military action fought during that war, the American War of Separation, and it was the longest siege that's been endured by the British Armed Forces. And Elliot himself was born in Roxburghshire, near the border. And since 1995, he has appeared on the pound note, the notes of Gibraltar. Now, let's put up a picture of the general himself engaged dramatically in the conflict. There he is there on the white horse. And That's from Defeat of the Floating Batteries by John Singleton Copley. And there, the right-hand side, you can see a Highland officer in full dress regalia as well. Famous painting that. Now let's have a look at the flags of Gibraltar. That's the modern flag, and that represents a fort on Gibraltar, and the key there represents Gibraltar as the key to the Mediterranean, because you have to get past Gibraltar. That was why it was such a strategic island, and remains such a strategic island today, and that's why Spain wants it. But thankfully Gibraltar is very much British. Let's look at the next one. That's the flag of the governor of Gibraltar, which is this impressive Union Jack with the Gibraltar ensign in the middle there. Okay, moving on. That was Gibraltar Day back in 2018. Gibraltar Day is on the 10th of September, and that marks the 1967 referendum in which the Gibraltarians were asked whether they wanted Spanish or British rule, and quite rightly they chose British rule, and indeed only 44 misguided people on the island voted for Spanish rule. In other words, 99.64% of Gibraltar voted for British sovereignty, and we're very glad that they did. Okay, next picture is a cracker there. Let's see it. Oh, it's gone. I thought it was up there. I know what's happened. Let's not bother. Let's not bother trying to upload the picture, because last time we uploaded the picture, the entire studio broke down. Okay, so that's on this day, the end of the siege of Gibraltar, all those years ago, and that's why today Gibraltar is still British, despite what the French and Spanish and indeed Americans might want. Good. Now I'll ask a question about that in a minute for this little badge. And folks, if you've never entered our competition before, please do try, because if you've never entered, you're in with a good chance of winning that. Now some people will say that Gibraltar is not an island as such, it's more like a peninsula. Absolutely. Let's call it an island for the sake of convenience, because it may as well be an island, right? It's protected, but you're absolutely right, as one commentator says there, Gibraltar is a peninsula. Good stuff. Okay, folks, do send in your thoughts. Lots of folks coming in. I Am Bland says it is an island. Keith says Scotland forever. Quite right, we agree. Good. Now, Lewis says just because people have things in common genetically doesn't mean that they have the same culture. That's actually true. And we looked at that in a speech that we gave on Saturday. And as I say, we haven't given a speech for 2 or 3 years, so I was very pleased to be invited by a group of, well, a friend of mine who runs a small group, and I was asked to speak here in Glasgow to a number of people, and I was given the topic, the Britishness of Scotland, and that's a fantastic topic to wax lyrical on, and of course one could write a book on that particular subject, and in many ways we've written several books on it, and it's just a matter of bringing these points of view together. Of course, I only had half an hour to bring some points together, so I didn't cover all the bases. But what I did, and we'll set this out in an article that will appear on our website in the next fortnight or so. I set out what is Britishness and what is British, and how am I, for the purposes of this speech, defining those terms. Because if you don't make your terms clear, then you can be talking at cross purposes, because people don't understand what your definition is, because everybody has different definitions very often of things like that, especially in the political arena. So I made the definitions clear, and then once we got our definition, I looked at the cultural and social examples of Britishness, and indeed I did point out that being culturally British is very often culturally Britishness is open to everybody worldwide who likes the idea of British culture and who identifies with it and who is loyal to it. So you can in fact be culturally British regardless of where in the world you hail from, or even where in the world you live. You can have that sense of cultural Britishness. Of course, that's also different from legal Britishness, which is citizenship. And a lot of people who are British citizens, unfortunately, are not culturally British. And although I didn't point it out in the speech, but there's many such definitions of that. Now, and when I say the word Britain, of course, I'm also referring to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That's our shorthand, always has been our shorthand for the British Isles, the Isles of Britain. And when we wrote our book here, One Big Country, at the start of it, at the introduction, we actually said that. That's our first paragraph. Britain is our shorthand for the entire United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that keeps things simple. And it keeps everybody happy as well. And folks, you can get this. This is an important book for us. It's only $9.99. You can get this off Amazon. Simply go to Amazon and search One Big Country and you will find it. There we go. Search Amazon for One Big Country. We do rely upon people doing that. It's the way we generate some income. Now, what was I referring to there? Yes, talking about our speech. So we gave our definition of Britishness, which is essentially the state of being British. And then we asked, well, what is British? And we looked at geographical and legal definitions. And then we looked at cultural and social Britishness, not just as far as history is concerned, but also what it means to us in the present and how it's made manifest in the present. So it's quite a good in-depth speech. We even looked at how does something become British? How does it move from just being Scottish or English or Welsh or Irish to becoming British? And we gave our definition of how that move is made. Stuff again that you'll never see anywhere else except us, because we are the authentic voice of unionism. And when people want to know what is unionism, they come to us. They come to us. They come to A Force for Good. They come to our team because we're generating that material. We're generating that information for everybody. Really important work that we're involved in here, folks. So anything you can do to help us, please do consider it, such as buying our book or going to our shop or buying our little badge at aforceforgood.uk/shop-1 But hey, let me ask you a question. For that's free to the winner of our competition tonight. And the question to send in, the answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk is, on this day, the siege of which British island, quote, peninsula, ended? The siege of which British island ended on this day? Give us the name of that place and we'll read the winner out at the top of the hour. Thanks to folk on TikTok. I don't know what it'd be like for these anti-monarchists, on TikTok. It's like, what do they have to offer that's better? I mean, can they point to something that works better? They never do that. What do I gain from being in the Union, asks Jay. Well, just look around you and see what you've got and make up your own mind. At the end of the day, if you believe that you'd somehow be better off in some other system, then it's for you to explain how you would be better off, and how things are wrong with the present system. So yeah. Yeah. What was I going to refer to here now? There's a lot. We've only got an hour. Yes, here's something that I'm going to just mention because it fits in with the speech that I gave, the Britishness of Scotland. And as I say, only had half an hour or so to talk about it to this group on Saturday. And I completely forgot to even mention James Thomson, who was the Scotsman who wrote Rule Britannia, Britain's perhaps most famous patriotic song, written by a chap from the Borders called James Thomson. And somebody sent me this cutting from the Sunday Telegraph of the 28th of January. And I don't know, I've never heard this information before, but I thought that it was interesting. I'm going to read it out. And this was as a consequence of some cellist, some musician, claiming that he didn't like Rule Britannia for the usual reasons, I don't know, jingoistic or whatever, and he didn't want it played at the proms. And so it was a response to that. And this gentleman writes in from Cornwall, perhaps if there was wider awareness of the origins of these words, minds might be set to rest. Rule Britannia was inspired by a lad from Penryn, Cornwall. Thomas Pellow was 11 years old and on his first sea voyage with his uncle, when they were captured by Barbary pirates and taken into horrific, cruel, brutal slavery under Sultan Moulay Ismail in North Africa. Pellow was one of over 1 million Europeans who were enslaved in North Africa between the 16th and 19th centuries. After 23 years, he made his escape and returned to Penryn in 1737. He wrote a book about his enslavement, which helped inspire the poem by James Thomson, which was then set to music by Thomas Arne in 1740. So Rule Britannia is an exhortation, a command to the Royal Navy to prevent Britons being enslaved by pirates who captured our ships, raided our shores, and put fear into many coastal communities over a good many years. That's a very interesting point. I had never heard that was the inspiration for James Thomson to write Rule Britannia. I know he wrote it as part of a play that he was involved in, but that may well have been his inspiration to think up that line, never shall be slaves. never shall be slaves again, presumably. Very interesting. Also, what's good about that is, of course, I don't know if there were 1 million Europeans, but there were certainly an awful lot of Europeans who did get captured and taken to North Africa as slaves. But we don't tend to complain about that. In fact, we don't tend to even know about that history. So it's good to bring that out again. And in the same paper, somebody else writes, Sheku Kana Mason is a fine young man, but he is a better cellist than he is a historian. If Britain had not, quote-unquote, ruled the waves, the Royal Navy would not have been able to enforce the abolition of the Slave Trade Act passed by Parliament in 1807. Between 1808 and 1860, the Royal Navy West Africa Squadron seized over 1,600 slave ships and emancipated 150,000 slaves. We therefore have every reason to sing this patriotic song with pride. A couple of interesting letters there from the 28th of January's Sunday Telegraph, thanks to the person that brought those to my attention. David says, Rule Britannia can't even rule the Channel. Well, sir, you are unfortunately right about that. These days, it's a song which is perhaps more aspirational than reflective of reality. As it was back in that day as well. It was an aspirational song back in that day when James Thompson originally wrote it. Britain didn't rule the waves, and it was only later, after that song had inspired people, that Britain did rule the waves. So we see these songs like Land of Hope and Glory as well. That's another one as aspirational these days. They're not reflective of reality, but they're something to aspire to. And in that regard, they are very powerful songs. Now, on that particular matter of trying to rule the Channel, it's ridiculous that we can't. It's ridiculous that a seafaring nation can't defend its own borders, and this is definitely an issue now that's coming to the fore. And in fact, I was approached today, I'm glad to say, by a television company that wants to interview me about immigration. So I'm pleased about that, I have to say, quite excited about that. There is an immigration debate that's being advertised on the internet, being run by Matt Goodwin and Constantine Kisson in March, and that is in London on the 18th of March. The debate of our time: is immigration good for Britain? And I wish them the best of luck in that debate. But you know, we've had that debate for the last 50 years, and you could go round and round and round on that forevermore, because like all things, there's some good elements and there's some bad elements, and if you've not chosen your sides by now, then you're clearly not particularly interested in the debate. So we've gone beyond, in my view, we've gone beyond whether it's good or bad. You choose your side, and our side is to stop the level of mass immigration that we have going on at the moment. In fact, it's now come to the stage that I've invented a new word today. And it's a controversial word, but I was thinking, how can you sum up what amounts essentially to an invasion across the Channel? Tens of thousands of people coming across the Channel that we're not stopping. That is an invasion. In fact, it's an immigration invasion. In fact, it's an Immi-vasion. An Immi-vasion. That's the new word that I'm going to start publicising now. We have to stop this Immi-vasion. And if I get interviewed by this television company, that's a word that I'm going to start pushing into society, pushing into consciousness. Immi-vasion. we have to stop the Immi-vasion, because that's what it amounts to. It's gone beyond immigration, and it's basically become like an invasion. A peaceful invasion, of course, that needs to be stopped democratically and peacefully, but it does have to be stopped. And the time for debating ideologues about whether it's good or bad, that's over. In fact, it was basically the House of Lords that ended that debate, because back in 2008 they looked at all of the arguments, and a select committee put together a fantastic report, and we'll put the link out there in the threads, but it's the House of Lords report on the economies of immigration back in 2008, and they looked at it from all sides, and they come up with the point of view that it was very much overrated, and there were precious few economic benefits to the nation, that the only benefits economically were to those who wanted to pay lower wages, and to the immigrants themselves, who would be getting higher wages than they might have got had they been elsewhere. But it was not, and they made it quite clear, it was not advantageous to the actual native population, which they defined as the British citizens and British people, people in Britain who had long-term leave to remain. So that ended the debate of whether immigration was good for the economy or not. But unfortunately, the system deep-sixed it, and they didn't talk about it, and we're still here today in 2024 wondering whether it's good or bad. Well, we've made our decision that we want to stop it, and the question is, how do we go about doing that? And how do we stop the people who want to stop us from stopping it? And in that regard, we're up against the legal firms, we're up against the so-called charities, we're up against the NGOs, and we're up against the British government that pays millions of pounds a year in legal aid to the lawyers' firms, and millions of pounds a year to the NGOs and charities which work to perpetuate the Immi-vasion. And the time now has come for action. And what we're going to be witnessing, unfortunately, is Keir Starmer probably coming in, winning, and making things a whole lot worse. And that's just a period that we're going to have to go through before new political ideas and new political movements come together to stop it. But the main parties, Tories, Labour, Lib Dem, SNP, will do nothing to stop it, and will do everything really just to allow it to continue, unfortunately. So we are entering interesting times in the next couple of decades, no question about that. Good. Yes, we're allowed to talk about it, but we're not allowed to stop it. And that's a very interesting dynamic that we've got here in the United Kingdom. And the Conservative Party, well, they've had all this time in power, and they're not going to change it, and they're not going to stop it. Not now, not ever. Because they're in the pockets of people who don't want to stop it. And if they're not in the pockets of it, they're in the minds of those people. They follow the ideology of internationalism rather than an ideology of putting the country first in all of these matters. So until those things get broken, until the link between the funders of the parties and the ideology that these parties support, until those two things have to get broken, and only then can change happen. Only when we free up our political parties from the moneyed interests, and also free their minds from the internationalist propaganda that they have accepted without question. Only then can we try to find our way out of this. And that's coming. That's undoubtedly coming. Aaron says something. If Scotland is too poor to be independent, why would England want us? Well, I don't understand the relationship that you're trying to imply there, Aaron. England doesn't want us. We all want the United Kingdom, whether we're England, Scotland, Northern Ireland or Wales. We want to be part of the United Kingdom. It's not a matter of England wanting us or England not wanting us. It's a matter of all of those who recognise and support the Union want to stay part of the United Kingdom. Scotland wants England in that regard. England wants Scotland because we want them to be in union together. We explain all of that in our book, One Big Country, which you can get from Amazon by searching for One Big Country. Check it out. My Slovitz says, which country are you referring to? We're talking about the United Kingdom is the country. Clearly. One big country is the United Kingdom. It's the coming together of Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Wales into one big country. That's the essence of unionism. That's the essence of the point of view. Somebody asked, where can I get this t-shirt? Go to aforceforgood.uk/shop-1 and there's a link at the top of that page to the t-shirt store where you can get it. Daniel says, is the book available on Apple Books? No, it's only through the Amazon network, but it is available as an ebook from Amazon. So if you have a Kindle or an ebook reader, you'll be able to download it that way. Gail says something that we concur with. United, we stand together. We are unstoppable. Absolutely. Now, we had a competition. I wonder if we've got a winner for that. Let's check if we've got a winner. We have got a winner now. We asked the question, on this day, the siege of which British island, peninsular if you will, ended, and it was the siege of Gibraltar that ended. And our winner is Catherine Rainey. Congratulations, Catherine. This will be winging its way to you. Our badge. For those of you who would like the badge, you can get the badge at aforceforgood.uk/shop-1. Fantastic. Good. Daniel says, we live on one big bit of land that's just been given different names for different areas. That's right. Derek says, congratulations, Catherine. As does Debbie. Thank you for your thoughts tonight, Daniel. Harry says, good job, Catherine. Catherine says, yay, thank you. Great. Well, I'd like to thank everybody on TikTok for sending in their comments. Bob says, bravo, mate. Ignore the haters who need to learn the difference between nationalism and patriotism. Thank you, Bob, for your thoughts. Great stuff. Gallus says, only way to go is to vote reform. And wonders what the illegal immigrants are fleeing from. Well, I think a lot of the Syrian ones are fleeing national service. They don't want to get called up for fighting for Syria in the various wars that are going on over there, so they would prefer to come to the UK. That's one of them anyway, that they're fleeing from. Good. Okay, well, it's the top of the hour, folks. We didn't have a guest this week, but we had a lot to say anyway. We'll be back next Wednesday with our 1 hour show. As we say here, thanks to all our friends and supporters. Take care. We'll see you all next Wednesday. James says, have a great evening, everybody. Absolutely. Have a great rest of your evening, folks. It just remains for me to say thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the King. See you next time.